The Jacksonville Jaguars and their fans received a major update in regards to offensive coordinator Grant Udinski. Does this mean that Udinski will return for the 2026 NFL season? He's not quite out of the woods yet in terms of making his return official, but we've got some news, we've got some updates that we're going to break down here on today's show. But before we get into it, Jags Now has reached 1,000 subscribers, and it's all thanks to you guys. Seriously, if you're one of the first 1,000 people that have subscribed for this channel, truly from the bottom of my heart, I say thank you. It wouldn't be possible to do this channel and continue to bring Jags coverage here at Chat Sports without you guys' support. And y'all have risen to the challenge, now hitting 1,000 subscribers, and we're not going to stop, man. We're going to keep things going here on the channel. If you want the best and latest Jags news and rumors, the best coverage on YouTube, make sure you hit that subscribe button. Here at Jags Now, we promise to give you the best coverage here on YouTube. All right, so getting into the report, Dianna Russini was first in terms of breaking news, saying that Grant Udinski has pulled his name out of consideration for the Cleveland Browns open head coach position. And this was kind of a somewhat of a shock, to be honest, in my opinion, because we'd heard, leading up into the offseason that Udinski could be a potential head coach candidate for some of these teams. Granted, yes, he is a young offensive mind, has never called plays before, and if he were to get hired as a head coach, would become the youngest NFL head coach in history. So it was always kind of a long shot, but then you started hearing that Cleveland was taking Udinski seriously, ultimately gave him a second interview after really impressing the first time around, and Udinski then, had the second interview and ultimately decided, listen, he did not feel that the Cleveland Browns head coaching position was right for him. Now, that doesn't mean he's necessarily returning to Jacksonville, but just to kind of highlight the Cleveland situation real quick, it does seem like the two front runners for the Cleveland Browns head coaching job now is going to be defensive coordinator Jim Schwartz or Rams pass game coordinator Nathan Scheelhaase, who was rumored to be along with Grant Udinski originally as one of two names that maybe they were trying to hire one of those guys, young offensive genius, pair him up with Jim Schwartz, maybe give Schwartz a pay raise and kind of form a dynamic duo where you have this young, proven offensive mind that could be really, really just unique and in terms of forward thinking, and that you could pair that with Jim Schwartz, who's been a head coach in this league, could really just, pair things together and really help a young coach along in terms of, getting him underway. So ultimately, Udinski, for whatever reason, decided Cleveland was not for him. He moves on. It'll be between Scheelhaase and Schwartz, in my opinion, based on Adam Schefter's reporting, which literally came in, I want to say about 10 minutes ago, that those two are the front runners. So keep an eye on Scheelhaase and Schwartz for that potential head coach opening there in Cleveland. But what does it mean for Udinski? Well, Pelissero then reported shortly after Russini's report that Udinski is still interviewing for the Buffalo Bills head coach position, but does have an offer with a pay increase to return as the Jaguars offensive coordinator. And listen, I think that the Buffalo Bills, because obviously they made it a little further than the Cleveland Browns, obviously making the postseason, beating the Jaguars, unfortunately, in that wild card round, but ultimately losing to the Denver Broncos in the divisional round. Their head coach search started a little later, and Grant Udinski at this current moment, as we're filming 12:13 Central Time, is still in the mix for the Buffalo Bills head coach position for 2026, replacing former head coach Sean McDermott. And look, if you're Buffalo, you're obviously going to do your due diligence, and we'll kind of go through some of the names that they could be interested in for, or to be their next head coach, but Udinski certainly is in consideration. Now, Cleveland, they were further along in that search. Granted, again, because the process had started sooner, but it really felt like Cleveland was interested in Udinski, and ultimately with Udinski kind of pulling out, we see that it was more of the Jags' whiz kid's choice in order to not accept the Cleveland Browns head coach position. Now, Buffalo turns around, and Buffalo, to me, is some in terms of, what they could propose as a head coach, opening. They've got, obviously, quarterback Josh Allen, which no doubt about it on any given Sunday, and some would argue on most given Sundays, he is the best player in the NFL. You obviously have some talent deficiencies there, although James Cook was the rushing leader, and I do like their tight ends, both in Dalton Kincaid and Dawson Knox. Got some really nice defensive pieces as well. But I think if you're an offensive mind like a Grant Udinski is, you certainly have to consider the Buffalo Bills if you're looking to become a head coach one day. And unfortunately, we've talked about on the show that if you're the Jaguars, you kind of have to accept this reality that, whenever you're a good team and you hire good coordinators and you put a really great staff together, like Liam Cohen did this past season, there is a chance that your coordinators and other positional coaches will look to potentially head elsewhere. And now Udinski, will turn his focus to Buffalo. We'll see, kind of how that tracks in terms of where things could land for the former Minnesota Vikings pass game coordinator, former Carolina Panther, former Baylor Bear, and current Jaguars offensive coordinator, Udinski. And look, just to run through some of the other names that are in consideration for the Buffalo Bills head coach position as of this current moment. Shout out to my guy Tyler Smith, who hosts our Bills Breakdown show, for giving me this list. They're currently amongst the names that are being considered. Commanders running back coach Anthony Lynn, Dolphins defensive coordinator Anthony Weaver. Mike McDaniel, the interview never happened. He was actually today officially hired as the Chargers offensive coordinator. Philip Rivers, who was kind of a major bombshell that dropped on Friday that he could be in consideration for the Buffalo Bills head coach position, he withdrew. He decided that's not something he wants to do. Davis Webb might be a potential option. He could also get hired by the Las Vegas Raiders, so keep that name in mind. Obviously, Jaguars offensive coordinator Grant Udinski, former Giants head coach, and in my opinion, still probably the favorite as we are sitting here today in Brian Daboll. Current Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady will be considered as an internal candidate, and potentially Clint Kubiak, the offensive coordinator for the Seattle Seahawks, who obviously they punched their ticket to Super Bowl 60 with last night's win over the Los Angeles Rams. And look, if you're the Bills, I think that you're probably going to want to go offense just for this time around. I think that they've tried the whole Sean McDermott defensive-minded thing, and usually when teams make the switch to, look at a different head coach, they're going to either switch young to old, defensive to offensive-minded head coach, whatever the case may be. And I think that offensive-minded is going to be the direction that the Buffalo Bills, look to head to. So that could be a guy like Anthony Lynn, although I would consider that highly unlikely. He was the former head coach for the Chargers way back when, did not have a great tenure there. I think he probably needs to work his way up to being a offensive coordinator before he jumps back into head coaching. You could look at a guy like Davis Webb, could be a really interesting name if you're Buffalo. He's had really great reviews in terms of, just being around Sean Payton, quarterbacks coach, pass game coordinator for Denver. Obviously, Bo Nix and that offense has had a really good season. Do you potentially look at, Grant Udinski, which obviously Jaguars fans hoping that he can return for 2026 and, however many years that Jacksonville's able to keep him on, but he's going to be certainly a name that's in the mix. Brian Daboll, obviously the familiarity with Josh Allen, has been a head coach in this league. I feel like that's the safest option. Like, do you really want to put Josh Allen's prime in the hands of a coach that's never been a head coach before? That's why I would probably lean Brian Daboll in my opinion, but we'll see. And then obviously Joe Brady, who's had the opportunity to work with Josh Allen. He could be, a potential sneaky candidate, although I just don't know if he is going to be the guy that they trust to lead this Buffalo Bills team going forward, but maybe we'll see. And then obviously Clint Kubiak, I'm sure we'll get some head coaching interest whenever the season ends for Seattle. So turning this to Udinski, I think that he is going to be somebody that even if he doesn't get hired by the Buffalo Bills this coaching cycle, there is still a chance that he's going to look at potential offensive coordinator jobs, in terms of getting play calling opportunities. Now we'll see, kind of how Jacksonville plays that. I would imagine they wouldn't stick in the way of Udinski doing that. And they've been open with allowing Udinski to interview for, this Buffalo job. And that's, while Udinski's really talented and very valuable on this roster, the point is that you don't want to discourage people from joining your staff by simply not letting them pursue other opportunities. And that's kind of the tough thing that NFL fans, whether you're, a Jaguars fan or any of the other fans of the 31 NFL teams, have to realize is that when you build a great staff and you have somebody that, has the potential and has clearly the football acumen, the desire, the want to that Udinski does, and clearly he's gained a lot of respect around the league, that's going to be coveted by other teams. And, look, if you're Liam Cohen, just part of the deal of doing business, right, in the NFL. So he's learned that, previously being in the Sean McVay tree, that coaches will get poached from other teams time and time again. And I think Udinski could be next in line, whether he gets this Buffalo Bills job or not. Next season, he could, or next offseason, excuse me, if he does stay in Jacksonville, he'd be looked at as one of the top offensive coordinator to head coach candidates in the 2027 cycle, regardless, maybe just even in general. So I want to get your opinion from you guys after this news that Grant Udinski has pulled his name out of the Cleveland Browns head coaching search. I want you guys to let me know down in the comments section, do you think Udinski will be joining the Jacksonville Jaguars or continuing to stay on the Jacksonville Jaguars staff for 2026? Give me a Y for yes, give me an N for no. Let me know down in the comments section. We will keep you updated in terms of the latest news surrounding Grant Udinski, but feels like, this was a really good turn in terms of potentially keeping Udinski on the coaching staff for 2026. Like I said, we will have you guys locked in, so make sure you guys subscribe to follow in for the latest Jags news and rumors. And until next time, Duval, we'll see you.